Hello, and welcome to another fully live Friday episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinzie. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have again my friend and coworker Kilian to talk about the security news of the week. Kilian, thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it. Right before a long holiday weekend here, so this is a good send-off.
Absolutely. Yeah. So lots of stuff happened this week, but one thing I wanted to point out is we actually have quite an active little Discord community at this point. And one thing that I noticed over the week was that we had an interesting video posted in that about how a phishing campaign was done. So I'm going to share my screen really quick because I know James is not going to be here for the whole stream, but I wanted to shout out his little contribution. So this was an interesting phishing case where Gmail was validating phishing emails, and basically they were coming up as authentically from the people they were pretending to be. I believe this was like UPS or something like that. Oops, that's volume. So yes, it was UPS. So people were getting phishing emails from UPS, and Kilian, I think you and I reported that there had been a data breach around UPS like not that long ago, or
Yeah.
like a way of scraping data from UPS, and that they'd kind of like buried that message in like a disclosure that like wasn't
Yep.
super clear. So the ultimate like update from last week is like not only were hackers able to get that information, they were able to send targeted phishing emails, and in some cases have those phishing emails be marked as valid. So what was interesting here is that there was a third party who was responsible for validating whether or not like these emails were coming from who they were supposed to come from. And the
hmm
hackers managed to find out that that third party would mark Microsoft as like an authorized sender on behalf
Sure.
of some of these organizations that use Outlook to send their emails. So if you were
hmm
sending a phishing email and you marked it as from UPS, and usually emails coming out from UPS are from like a Microsoft IP address, this third party
Right.
service would actually mark that UPS email as
hmm
a real email coming from UPS, which was obviously a pretty big oversight. It's a little bit more complex than that. I highly recommend you guys check out this video because I found it really interesting for how sometimes these validation tools that big services use are actually outsourced and sourced and might have issues with the way that they work. So people who were using Gmail who got these emails were probably pretty confused when they were marked as valid and they contained information about a real order that they were expecting. Like there's very little
hmm
you can do at that point to really protect users because there's all the
Right.
signs that we tell people to look for when we're assessing whether or not an email is valid. So this is a tremendously successful phishing attack just because it looks so real and they were able to manipulate the source of trust here. So shout out to James for jumping into our Discord and contributing that. And if you haven't checked out the Discord server, it's I'll drop it in the chat right now. Nugget.lol. Good luck. So anyway, very cool to have some users kind of giving us updates to the stories we talked about last week. So thank you, James. I really appreciate that. All right, so like getting started this week, at the very top, we are gonna go with our who's getting free credit monitoring a little early. So it looks like there was a breach, and of course, when these things happen, it tends to be through third-party services. Like often, like
hmm
we were talking about like some of these big car breaches last week, and how they were all tied to like, or at least a lot of them were tied to services like third-party services that were built into the cars that
Right.
ended up being vulnerable. Well, this seems like there was a third party here that was managing data for pilot applications. So this is the Pilot Credentials, a third-party vendor that manages multiple airlines'
Yeah.
pilot applications and recruitment portals. So obviously, pilots have very sensitive jobs and would be an interesting target for some of these like phishing campaigns, just because of the access they have and the special responsibilities they have. So unfortunately, these people now also need to potentially be worried about targeted phishing attacks using this information that was breached, because this could include your name, social security number, driver's
hmm
license number, passport number, dates of birth, airman certificate number, and other government issued identification numbers. So obviously those are kind of difficult certificates to get. Like those are
hmm
things that require a lot of trust. So that information just being kind of out there in the wind, like anything you would need to apply for a pilot job, obviously kind of a bad day for these poor pilots.
Yeah. This is. I mean, it's everything there really too. And I think wasn't it? I think it was like a third party. Was it a recruitment or like a staffing site, something like that, that got that breached?
Yeah. Yeah, that has happened a number of times. I believe there was like a railway
Right.
company that happened to, and then there was another one that we reported on not that long ago. Also worth noting,
Yeah.
Southwest responded by firing the vendor.
I mean, I applaud them for that. Too often that we see like things happen, you know what I mean? Like, and you can't hang everybody out to dry, but um, it's all about trust. And the data goes in so many different places and it's connected in so many different ways. Like you have to do your due diligence, right? I don't know. I don't believe I saw like they disclose exactly what happened, but um, if you're handling that type of sensitive information, like you, you got to do everything in your power, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And this is really the only incentive for people to be able to improve their stuff at a certain point is getting hit or having a peer in your industry get hit really badly.
Mm-hmm.
That's sometimes the only incentive for people to invest in the kind of controls that would have prevented this. All right, next up. So we've been talking a lot about LastPass, so much so that honestly, I felt a little awkward being next to their booth at RSA. We were real close and making eye contact with them, and I was just having to wonder. I mean, I figure there's so many people that are talking about LastPass, and some
Mm-hmm.
of the news that's come out around them, just as a case study for one of these highly vulnerable and often highly targeted companies, and what happens when they really get hit. So
Right.
LastPass has been, for whatever reason, a little bit paranoid lately. I can't speculate why. And as a result, they've really been clamping down on like being a little bit hair trigger about doing things that are on the secure, perhaps not convenient side. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, that kind of broke over when they started resetting MFA without a proper way of getting back in for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
LastPass users. So there was a number of different users who were completely locked out of their accounts and had no ability to access their LastPass vaults, which obviously is like the worst case scenario because not a lot of people
Yeah.
remember like what the crazy passwords are that are like in that password manager, and having like some of it in your password manager, some of it in your browser, while convenient, is incredibly insecure. So if
Mm-hmm.
people are following the exact like correct way to use LastPass, then at that point they're really out of luck if they can't get into their
Right.
passwords, because it means they can't get into their accounts. And that is going to be a really messy process. So it seems as though LastPass is slowly kind of getting um, on top of this, but it creates a security nightmare for them because if
Mm-hmm.
people can't use their MFA to log in, then it's very difficult to make sure that they are who they say they are. Which
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of an automatic way to get through that process. At that point, you just have to start validating customers manually, which is going to take forever. So I don't really know what
Mm-hmm.
the solution is here, but I do know that a lot of LastPass users have been complaining about these forced resets that cause them the inability to get into their account and sometimes prevent them from accessing their services altogether.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of an odd situation too, for as much as we talk about how a password manager is a good security practice for general people to make sure you get the strong randomized passwords and things like that, not reuse passwords. But when we see stories like this, and it's a lot of dunking on LastPass, you're right, I feel a little bit bad for them, but like it kind of shakes the credibility of this type of security advice in the general public's mind, which is the last thing that we want. Like it's incumbent upon security vendors in general to maintain that trust because we're in a lot of cases being that last line of defense, or maybe even first line of defense for strong passwords, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people really go all in on these password managers. We market them to
Mm-hmm.
people who might not be great at remembering strong passwords, or might not just have the brain space left for that sort of thing. And as soon as those
Sure.
systems fail, like we really don't have a backup.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a problem for a lot of people who have
Yeah.
gone all in on these sorts of security solutions. So yeah, painful to see them in the news again, but obviously, like, going through the recovery from, like, a really serious breach is tricky, and, like opting on the side of security rather than convenience is really gonna cause some headaches for, a company that markets, like, convenience and security hand in hand
Mm-hmm.
as, the way that they do business. So it's a little scary there, just kind
Yeah.
of seeing, like, when you're trying to recover from one of these big breaches, sometimes these actions that you have to take will be super unpopular amongst your remaining customers, sometimes for very good
Right.
reason.
Sure.
All right, so next up, we have A lot of energy companies getting hacked. Actually, somebody in the chat was saying, "Oh yeah, that Suncor Energy was hacked." Well, guess what? We're talking about that right now. So this is let's see. There were so many breaches this week. They're all starting to blend together.
Yeah.
But it looks like this is preventing customers from paying with credit or debit cards. It's one of the 40. It's a 48th largest public company in the world with an annual
Wow.
revenue of 31 billion, and it looks like their systems are shutting down. So,
Mhm.
I remember reading this one, but I don't know that there's like a
Right.
lot of details about this right now. Obviously, like they've been hacked, and there's it's impossible to pay with credit or debit cards at their stations, making gas the only options. But I don't
Right.
know that anyone's actually been um
I
able to claim responsibility for this.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't remember if anybody's claimed responsibility. I don't know if they said it was a ransomware attack or something else. Um, in this case, I don't recall seeing it, but
Well,
again,
as for, just logically reasoning through it, like there's like three types of attacks that can happen, really. There's like,
sure.
a exploitation attack where the lights stay on and they just get privately
Hmm.
told, "Hey, we're going to leak your data." There's a ransomware attack where stuff goes down and they get told, "Hey,
Hmm.
stuff is going to stay down until you pay us." And then there's a wiper
Right.
attack where they're just like, "Stuff stays down forever. Good luck. Like, we hate
Right.
you. We don't even, we're not even doing this for money." So of
Yeah.
the three options, when stuff goes down, I tend to assume either like a ransomware attack or somebody
Hmm.
really messed up the exploitation job and ended up breaking something while
Yeah.
exfiltrating, which like isn't usually the case, or at least there should be enough safeguards to prevent things from going down. So, it would heavily, ransomware attacks cause pain. If cash is the only option for your like thousands of gas stations to be able
Hmm.
to sell their gas, that sounds like pain to me. And at a certain point, there's
Right.
going to be a
Yeah.
dollar amount that you're missing out on selling gas that's just going to be
Hmm.
cheaper to pay the ransomware people
Right.
that. And whoever, if I was a ransomware operator and I saw this company, that definitely would experience like a certain amount of financial pain, and I could see their books and know exactly what that calculation would
Yeah.
be, it would make it really easy for me to pick a ransomware number. So yes, big company. And so far, as far as I can see on this news article, which has been recently updated, there's no claim of responsibility. But it seems as though,
Yeah.
like these sorts of knockout punches are definitely ransomware or financially motivated most of the time.
Hmm.
So I've heard of the Monopoly darknet market for a while now. We've mentioned it a couple of times, and
Hmm.
this seems to now be a closed case with the arrest of a Serbian man from Australia. I mean, I guess if you own a drug market, you move around a lot. But this is apparently facilitating $18 million in illicit drug transactions, and also had like an interesting way of doing business where they would like validate that the vendors on the website actually had the substances they were claiming to.
Hmm.
So it was kind of like, send me your drugs, and if they're good, like I'll put them on the
Right.
website kind of deal, where like, in exchange for that kind of
Hmm.
paranoia and perhaps
Right.
like maybe not very efficient way of signing people up, they maintained a pretty persistent organization, so much so that they
Hmm.
attracted the attention of the Department of Justice, specifically, and
Right.
intensely. So after a while, in 2021, the U.S. Seized the Monopoly Markets hosting server, with help from police in Germany and Finland. And then finally, after going through the records and stuff, we're able to go after the individual who was behind it, who has now been arrested. And it
Hmm.
seems like they're just noting a parallel investigation into Spector, which went after 288 vendors of the Monopoly market, probably after going through all these financial records that they
Right.
seized from the servers. Um, yeah, so it seems like obviously there's going to be a lot of charges for being a giant darknet kingpin drug dealer. A lot of these charges carry a maximum penalty of 20 years. So it seems like this all kind of started in Serbia and then kind of grew from there, which is just kind of interesting to note where some of these darknet marketplaces might spring from, or where the people behind them might come from.
Yeah, we're seeing this more often. I mean, we're never going to get rid of the marketplace. There's always going to be a market for these types of things. So we had what was the like Silk Road was like the big first
Yeah.
one that I think everybody heard of, or where this kind of took off in the mainstream at least. So there's always going to be a market for it, but it's interesting to see how far we've come and how far we've developed. Cryptocurrency is not as untraceable as a lot of people think it is. or not all of it. um, but yeah, let's celebrate a little win.
Oh, I just remembered. I had an argument on Twitter earlier. Well, not really an argument, but like, people were arguing with me slightly on Twitter earlier. I think it was last week. And I wanted to bring that argument here if I have it. Let me see if I have it. So I went to a bank, and when I was there, I noticed that in order to get access to the internet, you had to provide some information. So I just wanted to actually, ask people. There's a lot of technical people on the stream, and I was, as a Wi-Fi expert, kind of shocked by this, but a lot of people seem to think it's not a big deal. So like, I actually want to throw this out to the security community, because I was just like, this seems a little weird. So in order to access the Wi-Fi at an unknown, unnamed bank, no way of being able to tell what it is. This is just one like branch in Southern California. I noticed that you join an open Wi-Fi network, no credentials, needed, and connect to this captive portal. So this captive portal, it has like a SSL application, and it says like bankofamerica.com. So like theoretically, like I can, if I'm a very smart person, I can look and make sure that the SSL like makes sense for that. But really, like this could also be like a self-signed, or like a let's encrypt that's registered to like a, I don't know, like a subdomain or something else that looks like Bank of America. So I'm not really like, I don't think this is too super secure. But then it asks you for like information that I would consider to be like, identifiable information of you as a customer of this bank, that a hacker could use to contact you and say, hey, this is so-and-so from XYZ Bank. When like I talk about your account, can you please verify your account number? Oh, that's great. And what's your routing number too? Oh, that's wonderful. Like, so just as a phishing security risk, I'm always on the lookout of like insecure network configurations and other like Wi-Fi conundrums that I think that could be risky. And this one stood out to me because like I could just, like create my own little Wi-Fi access point that has a more legitimate name than ClientScape. Like, what is that? It sounds like a beauty salon, like not like a bank. It was the only Wi-Fi net. So I could just make, Bank of Who's It's like official network, and people find it, click on it, it pops up with something like this. And if they have any questions, the staff would be like, oh yeah, that's just the normal, sign in. Sorry, just put your information in. And then I, as a hacker, have access to all this information. So somebody pointed out that there is SSL here, and that means that somebody connecting to the legitimate network would not be able to have that information theoretically be intercepted, even though that there's no encryption on the actual Wi-Fi. But there's a problem there. I think that I could actually do an ARP spoofing attack. So if I got on that free open Wi-Fi network, I could actually do enough ARP spoofing to make it so traffic was running through me, and I could manipulate it, or even, give them a phishing page instead of the real page loading. So people could actually connect to this open Wi-Fi network and like be connected to the real valid Wi-Fi network and still get a phishing page, because it's an open Wi-Fi network, and I can like inject packets and like do all sorts of weird stuff. So I rest in my opinion that like this is perhaps not the best way of getting people connected to the internet, especially at an institution that might be vulnerable to phishing. But I don't know. I really think that the people in the chat actually like kind of like gave me some interesting points. That it's SSL, like they're able to do like maybe some other validation. I'm not really sure, but it was an interesting debate, and I wanted to see if anybody else had any thoughts about just a real world example of Wi-Fi configuration that I found to be a little spooky.
Yeah, I would tend to lean more towards your position. I mean, you're right. There are a couple mitigating controls, but with enough time and dedication, an attacker could overcome them and do something malicious. But yeah, I think especially for a financial institution, it's again, maybe a little bit more due diligence would be nice. Like I mean, Kody, you and I spend a lot of time traveling in hotels. Like those open Wi-Fi's, a little portal where they get your name, your room number, and stuff like that.
VPN on immediately.
Yes.
Immediately VPN on. Yeah.
Yes.
Like when I see those, I'm just like, wow, this is like the riskiest thing I'm probably doing all day. Because I have no idea if it's just a dude with a Wi-Fi pineapple in the next room, who's just capturing what he can capture. And like if I have to put in my room number, my information or whatever, I've just basically given away like what room I'm in and like my basic information, because a lot of those require you to put in like your name and then your like room number. Like, like sometimes like, I saw Patrick Wardle do an attack where like he was like hacking a reporter, and he basically used a fake Wi-Fi access point and just kind of got in the area and then like had her phone connect to it and put in her room number, then called the front
Right.
desk, or had like his wife call the front desk as her, requesting that an extra key be made, and like using her
Yeah.
last name
Mm-hmm.
and her room number, and they made the key and
Yep.
they gave it to this person when they walked in.
Yeah. There's stuff that you can certainly do. I would say, not that it's less risky, but I would be more worried about something like this for a financial institution. But there are plenty of risks, and I don't know. I try to not connect to any any Wi-Fi that I can avoid.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so here's an interesting question from the audience. What's your take on hardware 2FA keys? Because right now the debate is kind of between like hardware 2FA keys and then these
Mm-hmm.
new like passkeys that like Windows and Google and like Microsoft and Google and a couple other like services are implementing.
I think they're probably a good idea. I was thinking about it when we were talking about one of the earlier stories. Actually, I was thinking about it too when we were talking about the social security numbers and stuff like that. Like, there's got to be a better way, and I kind of like the idea of a hardware 2FA key. It's something that you have. It's a physical thing. I have one from Google. I think I got it free or something like that. Like, I have it around. I don't know where it actually got to, but I think especially if you're and actually, Kody, this would be good, and I'd like to hear what you think about this because you work with people that could be targeted, journalists and stuff like that. I think it's absolutely crucial to have a physical thing that you can't, like, you have to physically interact with somebody to steal. I just wish there was like a better system. Like, plugging into USB is good, but almost if we think of like the government, like they have hardware cards like cat keys or something like that. Like, that would be nice if that was some form of authentication, or used in authentication, I should say. Just again, because it's a physical thing. You can't steal a physical thing over the internet. It requires a whole extra level of effort.
Yeah, so I personally use hardware keys for
Mm-hmm.
all of my like really sensitive accounts. It's
Yeah.
the one thing I note is it's difficult to be strict about them because there's always an emergency and you have to
Yep.
have a shit ton of them. Like
Yes,
you
you do.
really if you drop the ball on these hardware keys, like if you put them all in your house and your house burns down, guess what? Guess
Mm-hmm.
what? You can't access any of your services
Yep.
either. So like and there's no manual way to get around that. Like you really like have to contact all of the services that you're trying to log into
Mm-hmm.
and prove your identity via like some trusted channel, and it's going to take you absolutely forever. You could really destroy
Mm-hmm.
your online life using hardware keys
Yeah.
if you've got like two of them. So if you're going to use
Right.
hardware keys, like you need to like give one to a friend you trust to like keep at their
Mm-hmm.
house and put one in like a safe storage box or like whatever. But I
Yep.
have probably like 6 or 7 of these hardware keys, and that does increase my
Mm-hmm.
attack surface a little bit, but I also try to keep them very guarded. I keep track of
Mm-hmm.
them and I make sure that they're distributed. So if I'm going on a
Right.
trip, I have like 2 of them with me, one on my keychain maybe, and one like in my bag that I always have. And then if like I'll have one back at home in a safe place, and then I'll have one with a
Mm-hmm.
friend somewhere else. That's how serious I am about
Right.
not getting locked out of my stuff, because I've seen people do it and they just some people just start over because it's so like it's
Yeah.
so annoying to get back into their stuff. So obviously like a lot of companies have been pushing these sorts of solutions because they really work. And think about it like a car key, like you get anxiety if you
Yeah.
lose car keys. Now you have another object to get anxiety when you lose. But some of the upcoming things like passkeys, which I'm gonna share my screen and go over, are kind of a bridge between that. Like, what if
Yeah.
the philosophy is, what if any of your trusted devices could be that key that gives you anxiety when you lose?
Yeah.
Because like you do a pretty good job of not losing your phone or like your laptop. So if
Mm-hmm.
those things became keys to access your accounts, then Kilian, like you said, you would have to steal someone's phone or their
Right.
laptop, and both of those things have authentication built in. Like you can
Yeah.
take someone's phone and get into it. Like you generally have to have their passcode or some other way in. So like it kind of like solves the problem of how to use a hardware key by just
Right.
picking an object that can become a hardware key. And then using that. I will say, if you like to wear accessories, if you have like earrings or something like that, maybe just like have a couple FIDO keys as your earrings or something, like whatever,
There you
and
go.
incorporate it into your daily wear. But I will acknowledge it's really hard to carry these FIDO keys or the 2-factor hardware keys like all the time. And if they get damaged or destroyed, especially if you're on a trip, you could be in for kind of a difficult time because the ability to enroll them is kind of limited, like if you don't have initial access. And
Mm-hmm.
on top of that, like it's hard to be strict about them. And if you create a bunch of other ways
Right.
to log in, then what is the point of having these keys in the first
Yep.
place, you know? Okay, kind of a long answer to that question, but it was a really good question. And
No, it was good.
yeah, so another one is what keys do you recommend? So personally, I like to use like Fetian keys. But I know that there's some other good like YubiKey is also fine. But I've been
Yeah.
using the Fetian ones after I got some for free from like a Google promotion that was like giving them out to journalists and other people that were like at higher risk. And I like put my account in that special mode where like it's really hard to like log in. Because like you're potentially like targeted. That was back when I was
Right.
doing Nullbyte more. So my primary account just got like way locked down, and I was using Fetian keys for those, and they worked pretty well until they did a recall because apparently there was some leak involving their Bluetooth keys that was pretty serious.
Yeah.
But after I got replacements, I haven't seen any other issues with them. So far, those ones have worked for me, and they're relatively cheap, so you can buy a lot of them, which is I highly recommend.
Yeah, I think I don't remember who produces the Google ones if it is that company, because they did have a recall on the Bluetooth ones, because I got new ones
It
of
was
those too.
Fetian. It's Fetian.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was pretty sure, but I wasn't positive.
Yeah. Great keys, but yeah, and like honestly, like they replaced my stuff, so like I can say that like they took responsibility. I'm sure that Google maybe like we're just like, this is super embarrassing. We'll give you this money to whatever. But
Right.
either way, I got new security keys, so like when they found a problem, they immediately notified me and replaced them, which was nice of them, and I appreciate that. So that's the correct way to deal with a problem. It's like you contact your customers, you immediately let them know, give them a good scope into the severity, and then like replace it. So last question. Can hardware keys be copied? I read about RFID scanning for credit cards. Is there something like that for hardware keys? No. So by design, these keys are like little chips, like special like security encryption chips with a big old secret number on them that are encased in a resin that causes them to be destroyed if you were to try to get them out. So recovering these keys is incredibly, extraordinarily difficult. You would have to like get the physical key and basically destroy it. And even then, you don't have a very good chance of getting the key out of it. They're basically made to be incredibly hard to physically get at the data. So you cannot do so in a passive manner because it's a public-private key relationship where like let's say that you're going to make a purchase or log in, like you'll get a challenge which gets sent to the chip inside the key, and then the key will issue a response, and that response is based on a special manipulation of that like secret key that nobody knows about, and that response is all that you can get, and that's like a one-time or kind of like a rolling code that does not allow you to use it twice, and it can't be used to derive the secret key. So that's why hardware is so effective. Like you put in a challenge, you get back a response that's you're able to tell that it was derived from a special secret key, but you don't need to know what that special secret key is in order to like enroll the device. Super cool. So yeah, like even being in like a man in the middle position, like you wouldn't be able to learn, like generate new keys, for example, using like a YubiKey or something like that. So that's kind of how that works.
Yeah.
All right, so Windows 11 is also getting the built-in passkey manager. So we've seen a lot of activity around like password managers and people popping up with like, either new password managers or things to help people manage their passwords more effectively. But passkeys are now becoming a thing. Kilian, have you had much experience with passkeys?
No, I know a lot of the vendors have been rolling them out. I have not started going down that path. Maybe I shouldn't admit that. So no, not really. It's on my list of things to do, but I'm waiting just a little bit until we sort of. There's always, there's always some teething problems, I guess, with new security approaches. So I'm being a little bit cautious.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I've only enrolled a couple of these, and what basically the theory behind them is kind of like what we explained, where like when you want to log in and you want to have like something you have, like your laptop computer or your phone, and then something like you are in this case, which is like a biometric like ingredient, or like something which would be a PIN. You can kind of choose which one you want. For security purposes, like obviously it's convenient to use your fingerprint, but like I just don't like them. Like I think like a PIN or something else is probably better. But the idea here is that even if someone was able to infect your device and try to log in, they would still need to like phish you and get your PIN or whatever, or your face or whatever, in order to get you to actually send this passcode. So it's turning your computer or your phone into a hardware key and then requiring some sort of authentication in order to trigger that authentication process. So theoretically, getting your computer infected shouldn't be an issue, provided they don't manage to phish you into, logging into an account, which, of course, as I say it out loud, is the logical next step for this sort of thing.
Right.
But it does raise the bar, because like previously, if someone got your password, then like boom, they're in. And a lot of the time, getting your MFA code is not as complicated as it seems. Like if you're using, especially like SMS or something like that. So this does raise the bar for people getting phished, logging into some of these services that might previously have been vulnerable.
And there are pros and cons for the different approaches. Of course, biometrics being convenient, but I'm not a lawyer, so don't take legal advice from me specifically. But if there's a situation, there's a higher burden of proof, at least in the U.S., or not burden of proof, a higher requirement for them to compel you to disclose a PIN, for example, than to get biometrics. So keep that in mind too. If if you're ever having an interaction with
customs, border patrol, law enforcement, like all sorts of stuff where like your laptop might get taken. Like, like absolutely. And like, at least, yes, in the United States, like one of the huge reasons why I don't like biometrics as an identifier is you have no control over them. You can't change them, and you can be legally compelled to give them. A piece of information in your mind would have to be like tortured out of you, and like that's not legal. However, a fingerprint being placed against a reader is not torture, and thus like can easily be compelled. So just be aware of these differences in the way that you set up your authentication.
Comment in the chat. Z says Kilian is not a lawyer. Correct. I am not a lawyer. Glad we've established that. Thank you.
All right, so we've been talking about this MOVEit data breach for quite some time, and there were so many organizations involved in it that it's honestly getting hard to keep track of them. This is now 45,000 New York City students involved in the MOVEit data breach. These include 19,000 documents accessed without authorization. So, this is hundreds of companies now involved in this CLOP ransomware, like MOVEit style attack. This service had a huge problem that was exploited very quickly by ransomware gangs, and CLOP has been cashing in. Let's see, we've got Shell, the University of Georgia, University System of Georgia. I'm not going to pronounce that company. United Healthcare of Student Resources, Green Parks, and just a couple of the organizations that have confirmed to the Bleeping Computer organization that they were impacted. Yikes. This list continues to grow, and we expect to see more people included in these breach notifications as the threat actors have time to go through all the data they exfiltrated.
My question is, I think we actually have a couple more CLOP. I haven't crunched the numbers or thought of this, but is this MOVEit breach, has this become bigger now than the SolarWinds breach? I mean,
it almost feels that way. It definitely has the same energy as the SolarWinds breaches. It was because it was just organization after organization coming out. I kind of haven't seen anything this big since then, so it feels like a fair comparison.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have, man, I keep seeing this. You guys, if you're a criminal organization and you're buying a cell phone that claims to be like unhackable, or like completely, encrypted or whatever, you're just buying it from Interpol at this point. They figured this out a while ago. Like, I'm not even surprised by this. So, okay, shockingly, Europol announced that they took down EncroChat, which isn't even a creative name. Like that sounds like what a European cop would come up with if they were making a phone company. So EncroChat, like encrypted chat, yeah, get it? Was a encrypted mobile communications platform that apparently 6,600 people were using to do crimes worth almost $1 billion. So that is a lot of money. So they ran a special hardened version of Android that promised users unbreakable encryption, anonymity, and no traceability. But unfortunately, it had been infiltrated by the police since 2020. So they infiltrated the platform and were analyzing all the messages, apparently millions of them, shared between users after breaking the encryption algorithm. Police in the France and Netherlands worked in conjunction with their peers to arrest these individuals, including 179 high-value targets. Whoever did their IT is probably fired. So, oh, yes, we have the Europol graphic. So they seized 40 planes from this investigation, 83 boats, 923 weapons, 271 properties, $900 million, 270 tons of drugs. It's European. Did
a lot of
they use
drugs.
tons? Okay. And then 971 vehicles. So that's a lot. That's like a pretty large criminal organization. So they were targeting firearms trafficking, drug trafficking, money laundering, organized crime, and murders. That's a lot of 11.46% of that's a lot.
Yeah.
So it seems like this was mostly popular, amongst organized crime in general. So I mean, I'm not going to tell you guys what to do. You can do whatever you want. I'm just saying that at this point, I'm almost tired of reporting on people getting like caught up in this. There are so many like marketplaces and like encrypted phone like spin ups that are just like clearly law enforcement fronts at this point because they're super effective. Like they capture communications and like they're really easy probably to get like permission to do because like people who are implicitly going to be doing illegal things are kind of like signing up for that risk by declaring their intentions, especially when it's marketed that way. So like it seems like the easiest thing in the world for law enforcement to do. So yeah.
I feel like Kody, we need a new segment on the show where we pop up and we read these things like the meme, the secret ingredient is crime. If you've seen that meme, and have a little thing pop up like one of those air horns too.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna just keep seeing this going. In fact, there was in the story, there's another service that also, oh yes, Sky ECC, which was also operating as a legal entity, but the European police broke the encryption of that one as well and monitored the communication between roughly 70,000 users. So even when people started moving over to the competitor to the service, they were just moving over to another service that was also infiltrated by the police. So this is like, you could just use like a regular cell phone and probably get less scrutiny, just doing crimes than using this service. So wild, again, just wild to me. But we're going to keep seeing him. All right. So CISA is tasked with a kind of a thankless job and having to go through and look at all the different agencies that are, like out there and see which ones have devices that are doing stuff they're not supposed to do. We just talked about the MOVEit transfer service, and guess what? There was multiple devices hosting the MOVEit transfer service. Go Anywhere MFT. This was also not good. And SolarWinds. Hey, look at that. So if they're still hosting SolarWinds, like the vulnerable kind, and they also have these other kinds, these are obviously incredibly high risk things to be running. There was 250 instances of web interfaces for hosts exposing network appliances. Some of them running protocols like SSH and Telnet. SSH and
Telnet's my favorite one. At least like SSH, like you kind of try. Telnet, I feel like you just have given up. Like this is the equivalent of just you like wearing sweatpants all day from the security world. It's like I'm not going to bother.
The metaphor for me is like sometimes I walk through downtown Los Angeles and I'll just see like an Ethernet cable like dangling from a third-story building to street level, and I'm like, why? Like, is this a challenge or do you just not care? So yeah, of course, like it's not like this is like a member of the federal government, like overseeing other federal government members. So it's not like they can find them or like whatever else. They just have to yell at them as loud as possible and like whatever. So it looks like they have received this report and they have been ordered to secure their internet exposed network devices. It's just interesting to see how specific, perhaps it's a sign that this is actually working, to see them going after such specific devices now, where like in general, the policies seem to maybe be getting followed and they're just going after the stragglers that have like let things fall through the cracks. At least that's my hope. If this is just like, there's some things that have fallen so far hopelessly behind that they're just like, they got to shoot these targets, like just to make sure things keep running. I mean, some of these huge data breaches we're seeing in like front page news, that is the kind of things that they're trying to prevent happening. And a lot of these ransomware gangs say like, oh, we're not, we're not exploiting like federal organizations or whatever else, or like things that basically will get them in huge amounts of trouble, like the military. But you never know, like that data could still find a home. They're definitely still interested in making money off of it. So they might not like extort them. They might instead just give that data to an adversary who's willing to pay for it. All right, next up, Siemens Energy. See, I was just saying there was a lot of energy
Right.
companies that are reporting being breached. So this is
Yeah.
huge surprise. MOVEit data theft, and who's behind this one? Clop ransomware. I feel like I'm just like
Hmm.
this is a one of those like Mad Libs, and I'm just filling in like the
Right.
company name every week. So it seems like they have been listed on their data leak site. The Clop ransomware gang strategy is listing the company's name on their data leak site first to apply pressure, and then eventually starting to trickle out data. There's been nothing leaked yet, but
Mm.
Siemens is saying that no critical data was stolen, no business operation was impacted, which sounds about right considering they stole data from a data transfer tool. Uh,
Right.
and they're not from the statement, it doesn't really make it clear whether or not they're going to pay to prevent the data from being published, but with a global revenue of over $37 billion, they probably could afford to.
Right.
So yeah, so far no resolution here, just that they have been listed on the data breach site and they have confirmed that they're victims. They've confirmed that their operations have not been impacted, but the type of data is still completely unknown.
Hmm.
All right, next up, have you heard of the 8-base ransomware gang?
Only from this article, to be honest. They haven't trickled up in anywhere else that I've seen. Like, they're certainly not a Clop or anything like that. Um,
Yeah,
so
well,
small players, maybe.
oh, well, it seems like this actually could be a rebrand of a
Mm.
previous ransomware gang with the logo that looks like a quadcopter. I'm not totally sure like what they're going for with the rebrand, but it seems as though their victims have rapidly spiked, kind of came out of nowhere and started using this infrastructure, and then
Mm.
like did kind of a full shift over at a certain point. What's interesting here is that they are claiming to be honest and simple pen testers.
Oh,
We offer
sure. Yes.
companies the most loyal conditions for the return of their data. Um, so they're basically framing this as like uh, they're punishing these bad companies that have considered their financial gain above the interest of their partners slash individuals who have entrusted their data to them. So these are this is the people's ransomware. They're really here
But
on behalf of
yeah.
all the victims to be like, no, 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 we're going to keep your data safe, but we'll just require a cool, 100,000 Bitcoin or whatever in order to get that back.
Hmm.
It Yes. So it seems though that this is just an offshoot of the Ransom House ransomware gang.
Mm. Okay.
And this is
Yeah.
based on the similarity of the ransom nodes and then some of the similarity in the way that these attacks are carried out. So, for example, like this is like copy and paste almost.
Yeah.
So either another group has just taken over the methods of this previous organization, or
Right.
they've just kind of changed their name and like respawned under a different like
Hmm.
name. But they're using a lot of the same tools. And in general, these attacks look very similar to what was observed previously from the Ransom House gang.
Yeah.
So far, they're rapidly escalating their attacks, and they've been going after a lot more people. So it seems as though we'll probably hear more from them, regardless of whether or not these are Ransom House members. They do seem to be escalating under this brand. It's really interesting to see how these groups are reorganizing under brand names, which then attract like
Right.
too much heat, and then they'll just like shuffle everybody around to like a new
Hmm.
brand. And sometimes these brands are like they have the seeds kind of like planted years in advance where
Hmm.
they'll like use the brand a little bit and they'll just like get it ready to be able to switch over and have like a sort like kind of a known entity already ready to go. A lot of these also kind of bank on their reputation. So if they
Right.
ransomware you and you pay and then they don't give you back your stuff, like that's going to establish a pretty negative reputation pretty quickly,
Right.
and it's going to de-incentivize anybody to give you money, which is the whole purpose of these
Hmm.
games. So it's interesting to see the way that they're kind of like they build reputations for themselves. They shuffle members around between these different brands that they put out. It's very much a kind of a
Yeah.
business and like marketing enterprise.
Yeah. Nothing really interesting. Z, you beat me to it. The Robin Hood ransomware. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, if so, where's my check?
Yeah.
All right. So next up, Brave browser is implementing some interesting restrictions that make it possible to stay more private while browsing online.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of websites that will deliberately request access to local services. This could be like like
Mhm.
anything like files to like printers on your network to all sorts of stuff that can be used to
Right.
fingerprint you. Now, this fingerprinting information is really useful because it allows them to identify you as you, and they can sell that information as they track you throughout the internet. But there is a lot of different organizations like eBay, Citibank, Chick-fil-A, and many more
Mhm.
that do this sort of practice just to look and see whether or not they can get access to internal stuff. So like that's eBay in this example, port scanning
Right.
users and trying to see if there's any services running locally that allows them to figure out what's going on. So obviously this is a little
Right.
creepy that websites are like poking around your local network and trying to use information about it to find out who you are. But this is a loophole. Chrome and Firefox both allow users to request access to local resources and use them with no restrictions. And this doesn't time out. So
Mhm.
if you were to give them access to this stuff once, in general, unless it's a high risk thing like audio or video, it will allow you, it'll allow them
Right.
continued access to these resources, and that allows them to fingerprint you. So Brave is
Mhm.
introducing limited localhost permission, and it basically allows you to time those permissions out when you leave the site. This is kind of a first that I've seen, and I think it's actually really cool
Yeah.
because it means it's making it harder for these websites that have found like an end run around, like other sorts of
Right.
tracking, to do kind of creepy stuff like port scanning. That
Mhm.
kind of thing might be great for their security and for their ad sales and placement business, but it's not great for
Sure.
user privacy and it can easily be abused. So it's cool to see that this is now a feature in Brave. The article does note that this is actually already true in Safari, but it is not by design. It is
Right.
just like happens to be that like it doesn't work on Safari. So Brave seems to be the first browser that is implementing the sort of privacy restriction. Again, like I, as someone who loves all those creepy tracking things you can do on the internet, find this to be pretty impressive that they prioritized it and
Yeah.
they're rolling it out. And I kind of hope that it starts being the standard in other browsers because, again, this is an easy way for websites to abuse the kinds of services that they need to run to actually track
Mhm.
you over a long term.
Yeah. I want to shout out before we move on to the next story. I think name one. There we
Yeah,
go.
I saw
You
it.
you knew where I was going. I saw it. I was trying not to laugh as you were talking.
I mean, at this point, my credit must be so monitored. There must be like 5 different credit monitoring. If my credit moves 1 inch, I should like all the alarms in the world should go off based on the amount of free credit monitoring that I and probably the rest of you have at this
Mhm.
point. All right, so next up, Proton is launching an open source password manager, and it has some limitations, but it's still like a pretty good entry into the password manager
Mhm.
realm. Now, of course, like everybody wants to manage your passwords nowadays. I mean, just
Sure.
within the scope of this, we've talked about 3 different companies that want to manage your passwords, but Proton is up there as a relatively trusted company that a lot of people, have emails
Mhm.
through or whatever else. So notable to see that they've rolled out some of these improvements. And on top of that, it has been audited by a third party, which, take that for what you want.
Sure.
Sometimes services get audited by a third party and they still fail just fine. So,
Sure.
like it is cool though to see that they're using strong encryption. They're using bcrypt and some other things, that being hashing, not encryption. Including instead of the problematic PBKDFF2 that we all know. Um, by that I mean I've never heard of that before. But yeah, so it seems like a relatively good password manager, again with some limitations. But it also seems to include everything, including the username, web address, and other data that the user saves on each item. That's not as common, and like
Mhm.
it does mean that other password managers could make it easier for like attackers to identify what individual field they
Right.
want to brute force or focus their attention on if it's like a high importance website. So, there are some privacy and security decisions here that I really like. But yeah, again, the service is very new. It is open source, meaning you can poke around the source code, you can try to find flaws or improve it. I
Mhm.
really like that as well. So we'll see what this contribution grows into. But so far, I like to see these sorts of security decisions made by a company that, of course, their whole brand is based on
Right.
privacy and security, as you can see with this like kind of like ciphery text in the background.
Mhm. The
Um,
thing I like the most, if you scroll up a little bit, is it's just a little blurb that's up just a little bit more, just above this about this part with the little graphic here. They're like fake email translation thing, like the almost like a virtual email, like a virtual credit card.
hmm.
where that just strikes me as a little neat extra mile. We think about it when, or if a breach happens on a site, they'll get your email address and probably some other stuff. But we can look through. Kody, I know you've done it with some of your security games, but you look through the email address or the username or something like that. If you can randomize that a little bit and not have it on other services, because our emails are kind of like the universal connector. I kind of like the idea that they go through the trouble of also making that a little bit anonymized.
Yeah, I really like that. The fact that you can just cut one of those off also. Like,
Right.
let's say that one of these services starts selling the absolute heck out of one of your email
Right.
addresses, and it's all going to like Amazon.4z,
Right.
whatever else. You can be like, well, screw that. And at a certain point,
Mhm.
like your real email address is preserved
Right.
because you can cut off any of these branches that start to get
Mhm.
like too much. It's kind of like having a Craigslist email relay
Right.
for every interaction in life, which honestly I think is cool.
Mhm.
So I honestly do like some of the privacy decisions made by this. I've used services that kind of try to do this sort of thing before, to make like unsubscribing or other things like automated
Right.
or easy. But I do like the idea of applying that to a password manager, or having like
Mhm.
your identities on some of these sites managed through like almost an anonymizer to
Right.
lessen the damage of logging in. Of course, that makes it like so much harder to log in when you have like a separate email address for like every single
Right.
thing. If this were to go down, as
Mhm.
we just saw with LastPass.
Right.
So, like this would actually make it almost impossible to log
Yeah,
in
I agree.
if you did have an interruption to the service. So like, pluses and minuses, like
Right.
security versus convenience. Again, these are some pretty hard and fast security choices. So I actually enjoy seeing them.
Yeah. I think the other nice thing too is you can sort of figure out who's also selling your stuff, which email address is getting them. Little naming and shaming of who's trying to profit off of your personal information too.
Definitely, definitely. All right, so how about my least favorite story of the week? YouTube is testing out the ability to restrict ad blockers, kind of
Hmm.
throwing down the gauntlet to literally everyone who doesn't enjoy ads to just find a way around this. So at
Right.
this point, like so many people have found out how to get YouTube content without experiencing ads, that I forget what ads are like. Obviously, this is a problem because now like plugins like uBlock Origin and other things make it easy to experience YouTube in an absolutely blissful ad-free fashion. And anybody who's listening to music doesn't want to listen to ads. So that kind of makes sense to me. Now, I went ahead and subscribed to like YouTube Music or like whatever, and it's
Yeah.
honestly terrible. So I can see why people would want to just use the uBlock Origin or something in exchange. But it seems like YouTube now is going to try to detect this and then like actually block your playback after 3 videos.
Yeah.
And they said that if you continue to use an ad blocker, then they may go after you to the point that they completely disable playback.
Hmm.
Ads are terrible. And I think that they are fundamentally like just a human right to ignore advertising. I think forcing people to endure advertising is inhumane. So I think that like everybody having the choice to, with a little bit of work, like opt out of ads, like that's just the way hacking works, buddy. Like if you want to challenge all hackers to find a new scalable way to get around ads, or migrate to another platform that might allow them the ability to do so more
Hmm.
easily, and maybe has a better business model besides just advertising, that's how you do it. So I'm not very excited to see this change being rolled out. It's an experiment. I hope the experiment goes poorly, is all I can say. But we will see how this rolls out. And if they hit, I'll just say, if they hit me with this, I'm going to complain a lot.
Yeah. I subscribe to their whatever YouTube premium, whatever service it is, because I consume enough YouTube content that it was worth it for me across my devices. But yes, this is annoying.
Ugh, yeah, yeah. I also find that because I have like 30 YouTube accounts, like
Right.
or like Google accounts, like figuring out which one has like premium or whatever else on it and being
Hmm.
logged into that one all the time, it's just such a pain that at a certain point, like I would just rather use an ad blocker. Like I don't know,
Right.
like I feel like making those services more valuable is maybe a better move here, but we'll see how many people love getting restricted to just 3 videos and how much great feedback the company gets for that when they roll that out to more people. We shall see. So this is exciting. Brief story: Windows is rolling out Copilot to early insiders. So this is something that will give you a little like, chat GPT companion on the side to help you program. It stays on the sidebar while you're programming and lets you like do cool stuff. Oh, wait, is this? Wait. Oh, wait. Okay, never mind. Sorry. I've been looking forward to the version that does like pair programming. And I thought that's what this analysis was. But no, I totally misread that. This just hangs out and replaces core Cortana. Is that what happened?
I was going to say, this is Clippy 2.0.
Okay, I'm so much less interested in this. Okay, so they've just trained a large language model and all the stuff you can do on Windows. And then okay.
So it's like, I don't know, most of that stuff, the little search bar down in Windows, you can just type it. I don't feel like it's that much faster to be able to talk to it. Although one of them was like summarize the articles, which is nice. I was actually doing that with the Bing ChatGPT thing earlier today, and making stupid pictures of,
I love that. Of
chupacabra parrots.
Yes. That's what it's great for. So yeah, like, okay, if this thing literally lives on the computer and you can like disconnect from the internet and still have it do useful tasks, then that I'm interested. If that's not the case, then like if it has to connect to the cloud, then like I hate this. And I don't.
Yeah.
They've just made a little window into Bing Chat if that's the case.
Right.
If it really does live on your computer, though, then like good for it. Like I would actually be excited about that, but I get the feeling it probably doesn't, which just means Bing has made a little window into their Bing AI. They just keep integrating it deeper and deeper into the Microsoft environment. It may just be like an always like an app that just hangs out now, like is just a deeper integration of the existing stuff. I was hoping that it was the pair programming one. I'm still looking forward to that. It seems so cool, but what are you gonna do? Oh well. All right, I'm going to skip this one because it's long. You guys can look it up yourself if you want to. It's just listed the 25 most dangerous software bugs. So if you want to learn about like exploitation, then this is probably your list of things to like look for or learn how to do because they are pretty well ranked. I think we're pretty much out of time. Let me see if there's any like really important.
I was going to say that
this is a good story.
I was going to say the MITRE stuff, just quickly, nothing like shocking there. And that's all I'll say. It's a lot of the common stuff, buffer overflows of various out of bounds writes, out of bounds reads, memory, like reading outside of the authorized memory, stuff like that. Like it's all the stuff that we've kind of known about. Like I didn't see anything in here that really jumped out to me unless you did. It's all the, It's always
exactly what I would.
It's always buffers.
Yeah, it's always what I expect. I see some of the overflow on the stuff that like WASP was like recommending, like checking out or like learning how to exploit because they're just very common. Cross-site request forgery, like a lot of like kind of basic techniques here. Okay, of the existing stories, this is a really nice one. I think we're going to end on this one. So this is a free Akira ransomware decryptor to help you decrypt your files. So Akira first appeared in March 2023. They amassed a lot of victims and targeted a lot of different sectors. And they also deployed a Linux variant. So it looks like it has been decrypted, or rather the company Avast figured out how to crack their encryption and enable a brute forcing of likely keys. So in order to do this, you need to have a couple of large files that have been encrypted with the Akira ransomware. That kind of makes me think that it uses like a repeating key or something that's able to be like broken up, like if there's a large enough sample. And that is really interesting. So it seems like so far, like the Windows version of this is available. And the Linux one is upcoming. So if you have refused to pay the ransom, now you don't have to. Because there's a tool to get the password to basically get all the files back if you have been hit by this ransomware. So we do see these sort of decryptors happen every so often. Typically, it's due to a flaw in the encryption, a leak of the master keys, or some other sort of exploitable algorithm. Seeing someone just straight up like break the encryption here is really interesting. And I imagine that the ransomware operators are pissed because this is their livelihood, and somebody finding out how to unlock it for free kind of undoes a lot of work for them. But yeah, always good to see, and hopefully some of those vendors who ended up not paying will be able to get access to their information again. Hopefully it still matters at this point.
Right.
Okay, so that is just about all the time we have for this week. Lots of ransomware this week. We're seeing the CLOP ransomware MOVEit file transfer thing pop up over and over and over again. So I imagine at this point, like it was such a large organized attack that we're going to see them sifting through the data and rolling out victims over the next several weeks. So yeah, I suspect that seeing as the federal organizations were still exposing services that had MOVEit file transfer and SolarWinds on them, we can expect to see more stories like this over the next couple of weeks as the fallout from this attack continues to kind of settle.
Absolutely.
All right, so I also want to shout out, of course, the Discord server for anybody who wants to keep the conversation going. We've had some great conversations there, and you can join us on Discord at nugget.lol. That's nugget.lol. I'll drop it in the chat again. We'll be back on Wednesday, where we're going to go over our weekly Q&A, where I'll pick questions that were in the Discord server and also on the YouTube channel, so make sure to leave them. And a big shout out to our sponsor, Varonis, that lets us do this stream every week. If you like the stream, make sure to go to varonis.com/Kody. That's Kody. And, they check to see who's going to that link. And every week we'll be updating it with the latest promotion thing we're doing. It's going to be, I think it's still going to be some research this week. And then next week we have some more exciting events going on. You can support the show by doing that. So please do. If you're even watching this on repeat, we appreciate it. And we will see you all next week. Goodbye, everyone.